Welcome to the Walk Around Podcast. Our goal is to share with you the insights, the skills, the processes, and the leaders that are influencing the retail automotive landscape today. As always, I'm one of your hosts, Nick Funch, joined by Danny Vendrell. What's up, Danny?
All good, Nick. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be seen. And excited about our guest today. We talk about leaders influencing the retail automotive space. We have Kevin Dean. Welcome, Kevin.
Hey, guys. Good to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. Kevin is the Chief Development Officer for Joe Bullard Automotive. And real quickly, I think he leads the charge in developing employees and managers to support their current and future growth, uses performance and development process he authored and deployed for the organization called Driven. Joe Bullard is the rare family business. It's been in business in the third generation, started in 1955. They have 7 brands and an expansive body shop. Kevin, I guess I'm just curious, how did you get into automotive retail?
Sure. I really don't think I could have drawn it up myself the way that it happened. But for the previous 10 years, I would say 2005, 2006, up until 2014, I was in roles in leadership development at companies around 500 employees, and really got into that. Just if you would have asked me early in my career, I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. We had an acquisition in our previous company where we went from 200 employees to 500. And then all of a sudden you had these two different cultures really competing because you had the acquisition, the company that was acquired, and the previous company. And I was tapped to try to bring those cultures together. So I got my PhD in leadership on the street. It was not in the classroom. It was trial and error and mostly error.
Yeah.
But I found a love. I found a passion in me for light bulbs going off and culture really heading in the right direction. That's what gets me going. And so I stepped out in 2015 to do leadership consulting on my own. And my very first client was Joe Bullard Automotive. Okay. And so I met with Ty Bullard, the dealer principal, and I really thought this was going to be the easiest sales pitch ever. We sat down, we talked for, 15, 20 minutes. He said, I love what you're doing. I'd love for you to be a part of this organization. Awesome. But I don't make a decision without my general managers being on board. Okay. How many general managers do you have? We have 5. All right. I'll meet with each one of those. And then those general managers, same MO. I don't make a decision without my managers being on board.
Right.
So 26 managers later, 4 or 5 GM conversations, CFO conversation, controller conversation. Ty Bullard says, we'd like to have you, consult for our company. So I did that for a couple of months and really fell in love with the organization.
Yeah.
And, it was at a lunch with Ty, and he said, what would it look like if you came on board? And I remember we were at Carrabba's and I just put my fork down. And as sternly as I could, I leaned across the table and said, not no, but hell no. I will never be in the car business. I grew up thinking, that is, you want to be anything except a used car salesman. I could not do that. And it just, I could not get it off my brain, off my heart. And I remember my wife being in the bathroom getting ready. And I walked in, I said, babe, I need to talk to you. She said, you're going to Joe Bullard. I said, I am. She said, what are you going to do? I have no clue, but I'll start Monday. And so from there, I entered into our business as a sales manager, not knowing the first thing about anything except where the bathrooms were. And so I was in that role for about 3 months and then general manager of our Acura location for about 1.5 years, with the purpose of getting to understand just the nuts and bolts of the business and then stepping into the role that I'm at now. So that's kind of my journey of how I got here.
That's awesome. I love it for a lot of different reasons, but I want to maybe take a deep dive for 1 sec. When you think about kind of that comment to your wife, or right before that comment where it was on your heart, and you had been thinking about it, what was it? I mean, do you know? Have you put any thought about what that was kind of tugging on you a little bit? Was it the business itself? Was it? I mean, because there's a lot to like here,
Sure. It was definitely the heartbeat. It wasn't necessarily the business. The way I see the world is just all humans. We just all do different things. Humans are pretty much wired the same way across the board. We all do just different things. I want to go on mission with someone who's as passionate about what I am as passionate about, as I am. That's the draw. And whenever you meet with Ty, there's a passion there about people. It was just a lack of direction on how to pour into people. And so I was that missing puzzle piece for him. And it's never stopped. I would say that Ty, and I know this is not a podcast about Ty, but this is my journey, right?
Yeah.
But he is equally as persistent on people development as he is results. And very rarely do you see someone with that level of equality in both. It's either heavy people and you really don't get results, or high results and you leave a trail of bodies. And It was just this perfect storm of, hey, welcome aboard, do whatever you want to, as long as it's moving people forward. And so in my position in my career, you don't get those nods very often. It's usually met with a lot of resistance. And I haven't been told no yet in 5 years. So I don't see myself ever leaving here. So
that's awesome. And I love, where we can trace it back and be like, you know what, when that fork went down at the Carrabba's, that's where it all happened. Kevin, you said something interesting there. You said, the direction from Ty being like, as long as we're moving people forward, as long as that's going in the right direction, the results coupled with the people development that we're moving in the right direction.
Sure.
And so I'm curious for you as the chief development officer, what does moving people forward, quote unquote, what does a successful program for that look like in the dealership space, in this automotive space?
Sure. So I'm a firm believer of what got you here won't get you there. So I came into this role, like I said, with 10 years of experience in leadership development. But what worked for that organization and that culture and that heartbeat, it's not like you can just repackage that and press play at Joe Bullard Automotive. And you can't do that at any business. They're all going to have their nuances and their own culture. So you have to come up with something that feels natural and that fits. Where I started with, to answer your question the long way around, where I started was with a survey of our people. So the minute that it was kind of in between general manager and chief development officer was this role, director of leader development, where I really just, I barricaded up the door. You didn't see me for 6 months of trying to understand what fits this culture. And to answer your question, what does development look like to be successful here? I think a lot of folks lean in hard on LMSs to check a box, or they do classroom to check a box, but you might only have one light bulb going off with 30 people attending that classroom. Or you bring in a consultant, which I know I'm pot calling the kettle black here.
Right.
But you bring in a consultant that seagulls, right? That creates a mountaintop experience. And then 2 weeks later, you're back to normal. And so I wanted to design a development process that if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, it still moves forward. It's not around me. It's not around the classroom. It really is around who you want to be the leader, which is the manager, right? You want them to be, I don't work for Joe Bullard. I work for Ty.
Right.
As a salesperson, I don't work for Joe Bullard. I work for my manager, Mark. And so that's the stress you take home, is the stress that Mark puts on me. Whenever I go home with a smile, it's because Mark was proud of me. And so that's what I wanted, was to create a development process that truly put the managers as the key player in all of this. There's not a week that goes by that I don't receive an email or a resume on my desk for a manager wanting a job. And every one of them allude to how good they are at training and developing people.
Right.
But they also are completely silent whenever you ask, what have you done in order to accomplish that? Most of them cannot answer that question. That's a very important question to ask any leader entering in an organization. What have you done? Because you can very easily list accomplishments, right? But what did you personally do in order to make that happen? So development here looks like the manager being a leader and a coach to their people, which allows for individual, very personalized growth. And I can go more into that whenever you want me to, but that's my passion. I can get on a soapbox real quick.
First off, I love it. And I can tell that you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
I'm curious, there's a lot, and you kind of talked about checking the box with training classes or LMS systems or those kind of things. But I mean, that's a pill that gets used frequently in retail automotive, right? Where it's, hey, you know, you need go attend this class, or,
Sure.
you know, whether physically or online, which is fantastic, except 2 weeks later, the retention rate is low, super
Sure.
low. How do you kind of bridge that within the organization? So you have kind of this reinforcement post whatever that kind of training or that execution of training looks like.
Sure. So it's going to be consistency and done in enough or a short enough interval where it becomes a long-term conversation. So it's not a hit once. This is a conversation that we will have the lifetime of your career here at Joe Bullard. Now the subjects might change, but we're going to have conversations month after month after month after month. And I think it might make sense to share a little bit about the driven process and what it looks like here for us. It might add some context into kind of why I'm passionate about what I'm
Love to.
About.
Yeah.
So we really started the whole thing of me creating this with a survey. It was 44 questions. We sent it out to each department individually. It was anonymous in response, but I wanted to know how each department fit on a heat map to see if we had any cancer issues right away that we needed to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But I really wanted to see the organization where we fell. And then from that, what are the top 3 complaints? Let me build a system that helps kind of curb those complaints. And so number 1 for our organization, which I feel like could be number 1 for any organization, is I don't get enough feedback.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Number 2, my manager does not care about my goals, which shocked me, but makes total sense because we live in a microwave that is 30-day increments in the car business.
Right.
Johnny commits to 10. Johnny sells 8. The first rolls around the next month. We slap Johnny on the butt and go, hey, man, this month get 10. But you never stop and say you committed to 10 and only did 8. What could we have done in order for you to hit your goal? We never stop and do that. So when that happens over and over again, you have your entire workforce going, they really don't care about goals. They're just throwing out numbers. Okay. And I feel like a lot of dealerships are guilty of that.
Yeah.
The third thing was there was no defined career path for me. Okay. So those were the top 3 things that went into the development of Driven. So the first thing that we agreed on as a leadership team is that everyone in our organization will have a goal. It's very easy to monitor or to measure salespeople, managers, F&I, service advisors, and technicians. Okay, that's only about 40 or 50% of your workforce. You have another 50%, the wash bay, service porters, admin, that really grease the wheels for this whole thing to work. And we don't know how to define what goals look like for them.
Right.
That makes no sense to me whatsoever. And so we locked ourselves in a room. It was probably 3 days. It felt like 50. But we had the big sticky notes on the wall and we said, parts counter.
Yeah.
What does great look like for a parts counter? And we came up with measurables for every position in the organization. Okay. That's number 1. Number 2 is because a dealership lives in a microwave of 30-day increments, we're closed on Sundays. So you're going to lose 4 or 5 days in the month there. You get 1 day off during the week. So you're going to lose 4 or 5 days there. And then if your off day doesn't coincide with the manager's off day, you lose another 4 or 5 days. So essentially what most dealerships are asking their managers to do is develop someone to hit a goal within about 11 days.
Right.
Make no sense. So everyone in our organization has quarterly goals. Now, that does not mean that the bills aren't due on the first of the month.
Right.
I get it. But from a development standpoint, we let the managers choose the metrics that they need to move. Those metrics are set on a quarterly goal. And then our managers have one-on-one conversations with their people each month. And we track progression towards that goal. Okay. And so whenever the quarter is over, we press pause at a dealership. We bring everyone together from front and back of the house, and we just praise people for a job well done. This is not tied to compensation. This is you're getting the feedback you need. We can see the growth and development. We've created and spent way too much money on building out software to track it all. But you're able to see someone as they truly develop, and it's very intentional for them.
Kevin, so I'm curious. So
Sure.
That quarterly plan, though, is customized based on kind of the associate's needs.
That's
it's
right.
not just cookie cutter, like we need to get better at trade appraisals or whatever across the floor and or whatever crucial conversations, right?
Sure.
So it's customized for each person, right?
That's it.
It's awesome.
And it's leader development is just this big gray area that most people associate trust falls and, let's just all kumbaya together. It's leadership development should have results, right? But in leadership development, people forget that you're dealing with humans. I know I said that earlier. You're dealing with humans. And if I show up to work each day and I do not know how my efforts tie to the mission that we're wanting to accomplish, I disengage. And that is true for a technician. That's true for a sales consultant. That's true for somebody who works at Wendy's. It just makes sense. And we forget about that. And we throw an LMS or we throw a class and we check the box, but you're not dealing with the humans. And that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. And how has it impacted results? I mean, have you seen kind of, I'm certain you have people metrics around some of that, but then business results too. I'm curious to kind of see what the impact's been.
Sure. So retention is up. Okay. Recruiting is a side effect of having a very defined process. Recruiting A-level talent because now you have a story to tell how someone will be developed and poured into here at Joe Bullard, and it actually plays out. We've been able to recruit someone that I never thought that we could prior. We now have a story to tell for the college graduate, whereas maybe the car dealership was a last resort. Now we're in the mix to have a conversation and win folks over. So we've seen recruiting exponentially increase our efforts in recruiting. And then year over year, results just continue to grow. And of course, you're going to have your pockets of managers because they realize that they're not coaches. And so it takes a long time to get someone to realize that they can coach and they can develop. And so it's not across the board, the whole organization rises. It's the managers that truly get it. You see those departments just exponentially increasing, and those that are slowly getting it, that rise is following. So there has been no downside except for the managers who say we didn't used to do it this way.
Yeah. And that's growth and stretching yourself. And that's how organizations grow. And like you said, incrementally year over year, you guys are seeing the results from that investment. I guess one of the things I'm curious about, you said you started with a survey, and that was really the catalyst that then launched into, okay, we've got these 3 areas. We want to build a program to improve on these areas. How often do you guys revisit that survey? How do you continuously get the feedback to continuously improve that program year over year?
Sure. So it's a little bit unorthodox, and I'm kind of a firm believer, and I'm sure a lot of people will not agree with me, but I never send out the same survey twice. I feel like when I hit you once, you don't know why I'm taking it. When I hit you again, you know what I'm looking for. Okay?
Right.
And so once we launched that original survey, my unorthodox way of understanding whether it's taking or solving the issue is whether or not a language has been created around what you've deployed that did not come from you. So whenever you see social media posts of saying we are driven at Joe Bullard from an employee that it did not come from me, or reaching out to me saying, Kevin, I didn't get my driven one-on-one this month. That's how I know that the hooks are in, if you will, and that engagement is up. And so I track quarter over quarter for those employees to see if we are hitting goals trending up for that employee, specific employee, or it's going the other way around. And so if I see those trending up, I know that engagement's there. It does not mean we're 100% engaged. That doesn't exist. But for the majority of our organization, we now have a language created around people development. And if you ask a frontline employee, how are you developed at Joe Bullard, or what does that look like? They can tell you our process. That's the win for me. So maybe I do need a new survey. I don't know. But I'm in the stores every single day. And I feel like I kind of know what's going on and what's working and what's not. So.
Kevin, how is the because listen, change is hard, and I think people change, or the changing of people can be more challenging for a lot of different reasons, pride, ego, all that kind of stuff. But there's a certain amount of, there's not a certain amount of, there's dependencies on the leaders to kind of be bought into the vision, mission, strategy of kind of where you're headed before it gets to that front lines. Talk to me about kind of how you approach that with that kind of middle tier of leaders within the organization.
So I will tell you a funny story. Whenever I took over as a sales manager at Acura, not knowing the first thing.
Right.
The office that I was in was an aquarium. It was all glass.
Yeah.
And behind me, there was a window sill that had a picture frame that just had 5 paragraphs of words on it, leaned up on the windowsill behind my chair. And so kind of in poker, you have a telltale sign. My telltale sign that I did not know the answer to the question, which was every question that was asked of me, I would lean back in my chair. And when I leaned back in my chair, I would hit that windowsill, right? And this picture would hit the ground, which bought me 3 more seconds to come up with an answer. I pick it up, I put it back on the windowsill, right? And so after 2 or 3 months, I hit that, what is this? And I picked it up, and it was the vision statement for the organization. And I'm an English major.
Yeah.
I did not understand half of what it was talking about.
Yeah.
And so to get someone to buy in at any level with a vision, number one, it has to be portable. And I consider myself a fairly intelligent person, and not knowing how this vision statement impacted my day to day, that's where we started the transformation. So before there was even a driven process or anything else, we narrowed our vision down at this organization to 4 words: serve, develop, profit, grow. Done. That's our vision. Okay?
Yeah.
We serve each other, customers well. We pour everything that we have into development. We believe if we do those 2 things, we will profit and we will grow. We will not do them out of order. We will not profit and then grow without serving and developing first, so we can ensure the culture that we have today can be implanted into the future growth that we have, right? And so once we started, that was really the stake in our flag in the sand, whatever you want to call it, the taking of the hill. It was training on those 4 things, and how the manager's role is really tied to serving and developing. And so once that sunk in, it almost as if the managers were looking, okay, what is the tool that we're going to use in order to develop, right? Are we going to bring somebody in? It can't be up to me. I'm not a trainer. I mean,
right.
How does this? And so it was almost a perfect transition into, and this is how we're going to do it with the driven process. So it was creating that awareness, defining what their role truly is at Joe Bullard, and then offering a tool. And it was a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about taking yourself out of production and having one-on-one conversations that are very awkward to begin with.
Yeah.
One-on-one conversations, it flowed perfectly. That was not by design. It happened that way, and I'm glad it happened that way. It was not out of order.
So I love the simplicity of kind of serve, develop, profit, grow. Yeah. I think I captured that right. And it reminded me, Patty McCord, who was a development officer for Netflix and helped through their transition from kind of DVDs to streaming services. And she shared this strategy, which I reflect on often, is like, if you want to pressure test alignment within your organization, go a couple levels down, go to the front line and ask what's important to them.
That's it.
And kind of calibrate that versus what your leaders tell you. And chances are you're going to find a chasm between the two.
That's right.
And I mean, what a fantastic story to tell about kind of this vision statement and how simplifying it. Because I would bet that if I were to go onto your lot and ask one of your salespeople about that vision statement, I would hear serve, develop, profit, grow from them.
It is above every urinal in our shops.
Yeah.
It is at every desk. It is on lifts in the shop. It is by every light switch. It's who we have. It was always there. It was defining what that was, and then making sure it was more than words on the wall, and it became who we were. So,
well, awesome. What an awesome kind of thing. And thank you for spending some time with us, Kevin. I think kudos to you and Joe Bullard team and Ty for kind of investing in their people. It certainly has paid dividends. Danny, I would ask you, what's your kind of biggest takeaway from this conversation?
Well, I was thinking about that same story from that book with Patty McCord. I think it's a theme that you brought up, Kevin, through the conversation was just alignment.
Yeah.
And whether that be very, process oriented with goals that are measurable, how does that connect to the organization's goals? Whether that be from a coaching perspective, a leader perspective about what the vision is, that we're all kind of singing from the same hymn book. All of those things together, incrementally add value to the whole organization and help you grow for the long term. So I think that's a great lesson. What about you, Nick?
I think one of the things I loved that you said, Kevin, was around you are employed by the organization, but you work for your leader, and that leader kind of determines your happiness, your engagement with the company. When you go home, your stress level, when you go home at night, it's all about kind of your engagement with your leader. And, I had not been intentional in thinking about it that way, but it resonates and it certainly rings true. And kind of if you have challenges or opportunities with some members of your team, I think you got to look in the mirror first as a leader, right? And understand what are you doing to contribute to those challenges and contribute to a fix. So, Kevin, where can our listeners find you? I know joebullard.com, LinkedIn, anywhere else?
LinkedIn, joebullard.com. And if you find me on Facebook, it will be filled with a bunch of kids, 9, 7, and 3 years old. They tend to take up my Facebook feed, but I'm not very savvy past Facebook. So LinkedIn and joebullard.com, you can find me.
Well, Kevin, this is great. If you like this episode, share it with your friends, and then be sure to leave us a comment about others you're interested in hearing from or other topics as well. So, Danny, thanks always. Kevin, we really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon.
Sounds great.